social media can fit brand objectives, we are delighted to have here Sonia Carter, who's head of digital Europe at Kraft Foods, Michael Nathan, who's the director digital marketing and e-commerce at Warner Brothers, and Grant Whitmore, who's the vice president digital Hearst Magazines. So if we could have them on the stage. And to set them off to make sure that they're on form, I suggest you give them a big round of applause. Thank you very much indeed. Right, Grant Whitmore, the Vice President, I said, of Digital Hearst Magazines. You've been US-based in New York for a year, and you're responsible for all product and audience development. So given the abundance of media brands, I think it would be interesting if you could tell us, first of all, how Hearst Magazines manages its social effort across all its social platforms, such as Facebook and Twitter. Talk us through that so that we can start the ball rolling.
Fantastic. And thank you very much for having me this early morning.
Right, everybody, if they could put, because you can't hear otherwise, against the chin, just don't...
Against the chin.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's much better.
You can talk normally and everybody
Not
will
at
hear
all
you.
awkward. So good morning and thank you. So, I am responsible for digital for the Hearst Magazine brands. As Alex mentioned, I have been with the company for a year. I was part of the Hachette acquisition of Hearst Properties in the U.S. in the summer of 2011. With that acquisition, the company realized that it had 20 magazine brands that it was trying to manage audience and product development for. And social at that point was a small portion of it. So we had some activity that was happening at the brand level to grow audience within Facebook, to grow followers on Twitter, but it was really pretty scattershot at that point. We had what we called an audience development team that was responsible for things like search engine optimization and our digital syndication effort. And what we decided to do was to put together a team that was exclusively dedicated on building social audience and to make it its own group from the standpoint of having people that was all they thought about every day. Really, the mandate of that group was to develop a playbook of best practices that could be applied across all 20 media brands, knowing that there would be differences and distinctions that related to each of those. We wanted them to be hyper-experimental and to embrace new opportunities early.
What do you mean by hyper-experimental? That sounds exciting. Well, what do you mean?
It would be easy, and I think up to that point, all we had done was paid attention to Facebook and a little bit to Twitter. We had a small brand in the US, it's called Country Living, that was messing around with this little thing called Pinterest, and this would have been in late 2011. We took a look at Pinterest at that point and said, wow, this graphically intensive social space is something that we think is going to be fairly important, and one that is going to be easier for our brands to get behind than something like Twitter. With that, we went big with Pinterest, and as of September of this year, it has become our #1 social referrer.
Right, okay, it's Nathan, isn't it, à la française? Michael, pardon, Michael, mais Nathan, Michael, or Nathan, which do you prefer? I can't remember. Whatever, okay. Whatever. Tell us about the social media scene for Warner Brothers and more generally for the movie and video industry. That's probably interesting to have your take on that.
Sure. So I'm Mike and Nathan. I'm working for Warner Brothers in France. So I will give you a vision of what we're doing locally, not necessarily what we're doing internationally. Maybe a quick word as an introduction of what is Warner Brothers. It might be worth just to remember what is behind. So Warner Bros. Is part of the Time Warner company, a global media company, as you know. Our activity consists in developing, distributing TV and movies and TV, and TV shows. So our main activity is the distribution, following the whole life cycle of the product. So that means theatrical, TV networks, etc., and including home entertainment with DVD and Blu-ray, and it's for the whole life cycle. So what we're seeing in Warner Brothers is that the social media, it's not a big surprise, is quite strong. So we have two major activity on social media. The first one is the strength that we have on YouTube. It's not necessarily considered as a social network itself, but for us, bearing in mind how important it is for the promotion of our assets and for our properties to push the trailers, YouTube is really something that we're taking care. And by the way, it's always the same, but the more you are taking care about those networks, and the more they are active. The other social network that is really growing and that is really developing is Facebook. Not a big surprise. We have a lot of fans. Not necessarily a big deal, because it's quite easy to be a fan of one of our properties. Just to bear in mind, Warner Bros. Is the company behind Harry Potter, Inception, Dark Knight trilogy, or for TV shows we're talking about Mentalist, Gossip Girl, that kind of thing. So quite easy for the people for the audience to tell us that they are fan of on something. So just in France, we have 8.5 million of fans on our different pages. What is interesting and what is important for us, this is maybe something that we can discuss later, is how can we transform that audience. The other thing that is interesting to see about the social media scene is how Twitter is evolving right now. Twitter is clearly something that we start to look after. It's really exploding, and what is interesting is that it seems to be complementary. If you look about the between Facebook and Twitter. Just a quick example: what we've seen for the last Ben Affleck movie, Argo. It was not necessarily a big movie on Facebook, quite weak, by the way, probably because the subject itself, it's about the hostage crisis in Iran, was not necessarily adapted to the audience. But since it has been released on screens, the noise and the strength on Twitter is quite strong. So it's
what are you saying? I don't really understand. Is there a different public for Facebook or Twitter, or it's a different platform, or it's a different style? Well, what is the difference then? Why didn't it work on Facebook, and why did it work on Twitter?
I think what is interesting is that it's different in terms of the usage. Not necessarily clearly. Before the release date, before the launch, Facebook will be more active than Twitter. To be active on Twitter, you need to have something that happens. And the fact that you have seen the movie, you like the movie, then you will tweet something telling that it's interesting. And it's creating a virality loop at some point, if this is good, and people will retweet and retweet and retweet. What is interesting is the complementarity again, because when we only work on Facebook, because Twitter was not necessarily something that we were developing. Some of our movie, we had difficulty to develop it. So with that complementarity, it seems interesting. The last one that we can highlight is Instagram. Instagram, it's very, Instagram, Pinterest, or Tumblr is still marginal for us, but we see interesting things happen. For example, on Instagram, what we have seen over the last weeks, it started to be a direct channel between talent and their audience and their fans. Another example, Todd Phillips, the famous producer and director of The Hangover and Project X, teen movies, is currently shooting the third episode of The Hangover. What is he doing is that he is publishing on Instagram some photos of the shooting. And it's quite strong in terms of reactivity and how people are interested to that. So this is really something that we will work on in the future.
Okay, thank you very much. Sonia, you're head of Digital Europe at Kraft Foods. You've been there in that post for 1.5 years. You were involved, interestingly, I'm sure you'll be talking about it a bit, with the Olympics. And you're steering the digital agenda for Europe for Kraft Foods at the moment. What would be your general take on how social media can fit your particular brand objectives?
Well, we're going through a bit of a transition at the moment, actually. I think we have some very large Facebook properties. We have brands such as Lou and Oreo, Philadelphia, Cadbury, who have, communities in the millions. Very similar to Michael, we're just, I think, becoming very, understanding the value of Twitter. It's not so much about us necessarily going after acquiring lots of followers, but just understanding how the behavior differs between Facebook and Twitter, what people want to talk about, and the way that they behave. So we were talking about this earlier, and it's a very interesting difference between those behaviors, between those networks. The other interesting thing for us, I don't think anyone has mentioned it yet, is Google+. So Cadbury UK has the largest Google+ brand page in the world. So we're very interested in
why does that work for you, and specifically for Cadbury, for example?
I think there's pardon the pun, but there's a lot of rich area in chocolate. It's a very emotive topic. People really like engaging with it, and through the Google format, we've been able to have hangouts where we've had chocolate tastings. We've had the scientists who develop the chocolate recipes come in and do demonstrations. Relating to the Olympics, we had some athletes who would do live Q&As. So we're really beginning to see the different behaviors that we can leverage between those three platforms. But I think what's also really interesting for us, or for me, is where Google is going to take Google+ in terms of the advantages that it's going to give us with search and the whole Google estate. So there are interesting plans afoot. So it makes a lot of sense for us to be exploring something as when Google's got a social network. It's really interesting.
Can you go a little bit into specific, what kind of things are you looking at? Where do you see things going over the next few years?
With Google or across? Well, we're already seeing advantages on our search results because we invest time and effort in Google+, so it definitely impacts that. And unfortunately, I'm not privy to Google's plans for the rollout of their ecosystem, but certainly what we've seen, I mean, it's a no-brainer to say that they know that that's going to influence how you appear in your results with all of the Google properties, so it will impact YouTube as well. So we're really interested to see how that's going to evolve, but we've definitely seen that the effectiveness of some of our search campaigns has been increased by the effort that we've put into Google+ on Cadbury. But it's definitely a work in progress because we only kicked off that page, I think, in November of last year. So it's grown very rapidly.
Just to expand on that, we also started paying attention to Google+, and really we were doing it just because we thought that it would be helpful from search. Interestingly, we now have about 3.5–4 million followers in Google+. It's absolutely had a positive impact for us in search. We're measuring it on the order of a 10 to 12% lift over where we would have been without having Google+. But it turns out that, that the followers that we have there are turning out to be reasonably active of their own accord and are also contributing to our audience growth in a direct sense.
Right, I'm going to ask a very basic question, but I'm sure everybody in the audience is interested. This is the basic one. I'm not sure I'll get an answer from it. How much does all this cost? What are the budgets for it? How do you measure in terms of the investment and effectiveness? What kind of budgets do you do for this compared to more traditional advertising? Is it more expensive, less expensive? How do you get the teams ready? What kind of people do you need? What can you tell us? Let's start with Warner Brothers. Give us your budget.
A budget, probably not. Now, I think just to answer to one of your questions about what are our objectives and what we want to do with that, the question just after building this first base, I mean, acquiring fans, is clearly what can we do with that fans? Within Warner Bros. France, we try to build something which can be the next stage, which means that we want to take the user and really keep a perennial relationship with those guys. Unfortunately, when you're just doing just having fans, and specifically for us, with a short life cycle for a product, because if you think, we have very regularly. We have new movies that have been released. So we are investing money to get fans, get likes on the fan page. But this money will be invested for no reason if we're not able to keep those guys. And this is where we are right now. We can commit that. That's true. We have 8.5 million on our different fan page here in France. But when you are starting to really deduplicate that, we are going down to 2 million, which means that we are globally we're rebuying the same guys every time. Which means that, which makes sense, by the way, because at some points there is a small part of the population, maybe 2 million of people that are really interested in movies and that are going on a regular basis to watch it. So what we're doing right now is building a program and building an ecosystem which enables us, when we have been in relationship with those guys, to stay in relationship with those guys and with those fans. So we are moving. We're changing a bit of the paradigm. We are moving from the just acquiring a fan to just get people involved in a whole program. And in terms of how does it represent and what does it like, we're just moving for a single page or a simple page to an application system, which means that on every pages you will find an application, a dedicated application, where the user can find everything related to the movie itself, but more too. And to answer to the question of the panel, how can this fit brand objectives? This application is called My Warner. So at some point, what we try to do is to just leverage on the fame properties to develop the brand awareness and trying to create bridges between those different properties.
Okay, let's hear about Kraft Foods, Sonia.
So, as I said, we're just going through a transition at the moment where we're going to start looking at social media in a much deeper way. So we've been very lucky that a lot of our brands, we have acquired large number of fans because there is a great love for a lot of them. So actually acquiring them has been the objective for the last few years. And now we're looking at splitting out and having a dedicated focus on the social CRM, very similar to what Michael has been talking about, which is going to be really interesting. And then also it will continue to be a medium for an advertising medium effectively. So particularly with Twitter, where you're reaching not just your followers, but way beyond that. And with the new advertising formats within Facebook as well, about how we can reach beyond our fans. So we will, in terms of what our investment is, it's very difficult to say because there is so many elements of that. There is the community management side of it. There is developing apps like, we have lots of Facebook apps, for instance. So there's production element of that. There's also the media we're now putting behind some promoted tweets and promoted posts or promoted trends. So I think that, we will continue to, it's an incredibly important channel to us because we have brands that people really love and they want to connect with. So
has this involved very much reorganization internally of teams and the way you do things and allocation of budgets and so forth, obviously?
Well, you're going to see my colleague Michael later on, who's going to be looking after the social and CRM side of it. So yes, we are looking at a reorganization. I think as consumer behavior is changing, we need to adapt to that and make sure that we've got, the right focus in those areas. Digital is so huge. We were just all talking before about, you would be in every meeting in your business if you genuinely looked after every element of digital. So it's about focusing on the elements of digital that are really going to have impact for our brands. Social is incredibly important. We have around 25 million fans altogether in Europe. So, yes, we are reorganizing ourselves to reflect the change in consumer behavior, their sophistication, the mass adoption, and how they are actually using those channels now. We need to reorganize ourselves. So.
Okay, Grant, tell us about Hearst Magazines.
So at Hearst Magazines, as I had mentioned before, there was some work that was happening within each of the brands on social. We decided when we were going to put together a team that was focused just to social, that really their job was going to help the brands figure out how to do better. That team is 4 people. So we've got a director of the team and 3 very, very hardworking doers that work with the 20 brands. Within the brands, there are typically 1 to 2 web editors that are handling the bulk of the social activity, whether that's pinning photos, or tweeting, or taking care of the Facebook posting activity. So I don't know if that answers the question in terms of structure, and I absolutely know it doesn't answer the question in terms of budget. But really, it was concentrating the effort around this group of 4 to make sure that the other 20 to 40 people that were working on it were as effective as they could be.
What are you getting in terms of the results already, and how do you measure the results of this change of policy?
Well, so we look at it. So as a media company, I think what we are most interested in is making sure that folks engage with our brands consistently across every platform. This was a new platform for us. Last year at this time, we had about 6 million fans and followers across all of the different social platforms that we're engaging with. At this point, we are at about 22 million. So just in terms of raw numbers, we consider that a success. Where it comes home for us, though, is it has turned out to be a relatively inexpensive customer acquisition tool for us. So the nice thing about working with brands like Elle and Marie Claire and Esquire and Car and Driver is there's a lot of consumer awareness there already, and they are happy to see us and engage with us in these new platforms, and it provides them a different way in to our other digital assets. Social made up less than 1% of our total web traffic across the network last year. It's now at 6%. We expect that it'll be north of 10% by the middle of next year. So these are the things that we sort of look at every single day. And then I think the next big one would be, what does it create for us in terms of new selling opportunities? And there have been some interesting campaigns, integrated campaigns that we have been able to deliver that leverage social as a primary aspect. One of the big ones that we ran this year was it was for Maybelline. It was called Kisses for the Troops. It was basically a cute, very big campaign that was a big portion of it was through Facebook. It also ran in print and across the websites to basically send kisses to the U.S. troops serving overseas. Big campaign, and the social media aspect of it was huge. We did another one with Redbook around Father's Day that was very, very successful as well.
Are we going into a more split world where a certain of your customers, you're going to approach them through social media and others are not? Is the world becoming more and more of a split place, or how do you? Because, for example, my parents eat all your foods all the time, but there's no way they're going to find anything about the food on social network. Yeah. Is that becoming more and more of a divide as we go in 10 years' time? There's going to be those who do and those who don't, or how are you coping with that?
I think I would say the opposite. I would hope that we're going to become much more integrated. So, a consumer isn't aware of what touch points they have with our brand. Which is, I guess, is making the analysis of that a little bit more difficult. So the recall of which channels they've connected with us on. But no, I'm hoping that it will become much more holistic, and that all of our, whatever channels and touch points our consumers choose to have with us, it's all consistent with messaging, it's consistently engaging, and that you're not missing out because you engage with us just when you're reading a magazine or you're sitting in a cinema seeing a video advert. So no, I'm hoping that where we're really driving to is more of a connections strategy. So what does it mean for us that when someone is reading a magazine, they're also probably got their smartphone out, and if they're watching a TV show, they're probably doing something else at the same time, and they've seen outdoor. And I think I'm hoping the opposite, that we will, fingers crossed, that we get there.
Is holistic a word which would sum up your approach at Warner Brothers?
Yeah, I think that's quite the same in terms of it's really for us it's really complementary. Again, a good way to look at that is just having a segmentation of our media mix. We are investing more and more in digital. That's not a big surprise. I think we have to, and this is very interesting in terms of transformation rate analysis and everything. But we're still doing outdoor, and we're still financing our trailers on screens in order for the people to be aware of what's happening. But what we're trying to do is to create links and bridges between those different environments and different support in order to bring people from one to the other. For example, what we're doing is that we are putting a tag at the end of our trailers, just mentioning the fact that this is a Warner Bros. Trailer, and in France you can find the program, the famous social CRM program that we have talked about on warnerbros.fr website. And the other thing that we will have to look after in the coming months is really the complementarity in terms of the usage. Clearly, we were talking about budget and cost. Clearly, this is something that we have to do. This is expensive to develop an application which will be completely compliant with all the devices, PC, Mac, a mobile, tablet, everything. Tomorrow, connected TV, because because of our business, we have to integrate that too. This is representing an investment, but this is the way we think we will be able to bring the different categories of user to digital.
Gronk? How do you think that things are developing for you in the future?
So we certainly see this. We certainly see this as a holistic approach. I think one of the things that has been really illuminating for us is that some of our social audiences are 3 to 4 times the size of what our traditional digital audience is. And when we look at that as a pathway into a brand, and a great example of this is Harper's Bazaar, which is a venerable fashion brand in the U.S. and abroad, and digitally it is now 5 times bigger and from a social standpoint than it is at the harpersbazaar.com level. And it has completely surprised us by becoming the #1 brand, period, on Pinterest. So when we talked about being sort of hyper aggressive as it related to our engagement with these different platforms that emerge, again, Pinterest wasn't on our radar at all at this time of last year. It was one brand within Hearst Magazines that was messing around with it a little bit. It's now the largest source of traffic for one of the biggest fashion brands in the world, and that's an amazing thing. With that, we have to view it as part of a larger whole.
Okay, we have about 10 minutes left. Pierre, I'm sure there's some questions in the audience.
So who wants to wake up? Vous dormez. There is a question here. So can you tell us who you are and ask your question?
Good morning. My name is Ruth Coates. I'm from Staples Europe. My question to the panel is whether you began with your social journey jumping in with tactical activity straight away, or did you take a bit of a broader step back and look at developing a strategy for your social activity that fitted with your wider brand and marketing objectives?
So did you just jump in, or did you have a long look at it beforehand?
Alex, could you please translate the question in French, because I'm not sure that.
Est-ce que vous avez fait des études à long terme, ou est-ce que vous avez fait un saut dans le vide pour tout de suite vous immerger dans ce monde, ou est-ce que vous avez pris une vision un peu plus à long terme?
Merci.
to be honest, we didn't have time to do studies or whatever. We need just to be there. I mean, they were not waiting for us. And if you think about social media, it's an animal who's living by itself. So, and specifically for us, the question is, if you are not preempting at some point this environment, other people will do it. We've seen that at the beginning on Facebook. There was a lot of people that were creating fan pages, and we had to create our own official ones. I think the question was essentially at the beginning to be there and to try to build something that's creating value. The big question for us, and specifically for the future, is now, as it starts to be a mature activity for us. When I say mature, I would say that we know how to do it. We know what is important for us. What are our KPIs? How can we leverage on it and build something strong? And this is where another story is coming in, and we're opening another box, which is how can we leverage the data. And essentially, what is behind all of this social network and all this social activity? We are talking a lot about big data. This is where we are. What can we do with those big data, and how can we leverage on it? Because I really think this is where we will be able to create value.
I think my microphone. Oh, there we go. It's a mixed answer, actually. I think if I think about when I joined and I was asked to come up with a strategy for the Olympics, the Cadbury sponsorship of the Olympics, yes, there was a broad strategy, which was we understand that we want to connect with younger consumers, and we know that they're on social. We know that we have a 2-year program and that social is great for having an always-on communication. And we want to drive deeper engagement, again, that's social. So there was a broader communication strategy, which we knew social media was the answer to that. And then I think in terms of how we've had success with that, I think the reality is that a lot of it is test and learn. And because consumer behavior changes so rapidly and the media and technology changes so rapidly, I can call it a strategy, but it'll probably not be it'll be out of date within 6 to 12 months because of changes there. But I think, now where we are at is that we have a marketing strategy and a communication strategy, and it's how digital fits into that. So when we have marketing challenges, what bits of that can social solve? So going back to the previous question about, being holistic in our approach. So no, there is a broad strategy. So from my point of view, there'll be a broad strategy from a European point of view. So what does my company see the role of digital being? And then for each category or each brand, social is going to have a different advantage. So it's very different for what it will do on Louvre and what it will do for Tassimo or Philadelphia or Milka. But those are more, yes, there is broad strategies, but I think where we've seen the really great success has actually been through knowing where we're going to go, but having little test and learns to get there, very much like the Pinterest example. That was how we sort of got such a success with Google Plus and Twitter more recently.
Okay, Gronk, quick example.
I think for us, we just sort of necessarily jumped right into it, and the reason for that was to Mikhail's earlier point, it's where our fans already were. And so the conversations were already occurring. I give credit to great editorial teams that just started, tweeting on their own, who just started posting to Facebook on their own because it was something that they were interested and passionate about. When we decided to organize the team, the goal was to not really overthink it and apply a rigid strategy to how we were going to approach social generally. The goal was to understand what were the benchmarks of success and to give some guidelines in terms of what were the right ways to represent the brands online and maybe where did you need to be more careful. It's worked tremendously well for us, and I would say some big and sort of obvious examples to the contrary, you need to be experimental in your approach to this, and an overly thought strategy could be detrimental to your long-term success.
Okay, should we, Pierre, should we take another question?
The last one, maybe?
Yes, we have one. We have 2 or 3 here in the front. Here, front
Where?
rows. Lady here. There we are.
Oh, okay.
Why don't you stand up so that we can see you there? And there's also a question, I think, from here. We have about 5. I do want to keep things on time today because we're already a little late and we have to have lunch and so forth. So we have 5 more minutes. 2 questions, quick answers, quick replies.
Hello.
Okay?
Hello, my name is Laura Feduc. I'm digital director for the group Pooch. So we are managing a lot of brands as well. My question is more about how did you, or how you are not, adapting your social media strategy to the different country and cultures in terms of community management?
Huge question. A few quick examples to say. It's an obvious question, but different cultural things.
Yeah, so we do take the communities are managed locally. So there's usually someone looking at either from a European region point of view or a global point of view. But for the brands that have large communities and disparate communities like Milka, for instance, I think there are around 20 different community managers when we got them all in a room. And they respond to the culture and the nuances of language that, you know, you have to respect the local communication strategy, really. Absolutely, but it's again, it's different for each of our brands. Some of them we can be more broad. We have other brands where the tone is quite consistent, but no, we absolutely try and, as much as possible, make it relevant to the local markets and empower the local markets to have their own content.
I was just I'm English, I live in France. I got some Marks and Spencer's just opened down the road, and I was trying to persuade French people to eat Toad in the Hole. Capot dans le trou, c'est le nom de ce repas. I was trying last night, so I understand everything you say about cultural differences, because they didn't understand it and they didn't like it at all. Anyway, quick reply, cultural differences?
I mean, what I can tell you is that clearly in France we have our own specificities. It's true for the business that we're doing. For example, in Warner Bros. France, one of our specificities is that we are distributing local production, and some have been very successful over the last months. In instance, The Artist is a movie that has been produced in France and distributed by Warner Bros. France. What is interesting here is that we have to manage specifically this in France because it was quite strong, and then it has to be managed in the US when they get the Oscar and everything. And clearly we realize that the way it has been managed is very, very different. So you need to take care about the culture of the country where you're doing that.
Can I also just say a really quick thing is also that the channels are different, because I think, you know, with Pinterest is an example where it's huge in some places and not in other. Twitter is huge in some places and other. We have markets where Facebook is not the dominant network as well.
Great example. And I would say Hearst definitely treats this on a country-by-country basis, as it typically has with all of its media properties. So this is an extension of a media brand that is unique within a country, even if it's a shared brand that spans many countries, and the social effort is absolutely the same.
Perfect. We could talk for a lot more time. I'm sure we've got more examples. 3 very important brands. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you very much.
With us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Big round of applause. Thank you very much.
Thank you.